Well, welcome back to Stars and Gripes, the show where we expose the hypocrisy of the journalist elite in America. And what a show we have for tonight. It is really the dream situation for those activist journalists. President Donald Trump and Elon Musk throwing barbs in what seems to be an increasingly escalating petty feud. And I'm very happy because it gives us plenty of content. Because when the leftist media feels like they have a win, that's actually when they overreach in the most extraordinary of ways. And what you are watching on repeat on every channel in the world is live coverage of these journalists salivating at the petty drama. Now, Gaza, Ukraine, the threat of nuclear escalation with Russia, Chinese submarines circling Taiwan like hungry hawks, none of that matters because the boys we don't like are fighting. And that, at least for those at CNN, is the single most important story in the world right now.
We've been watching President Trump in the Oval Office with the German Chancellor, and a lot to get to here. But the most interesting and perhaps important issue, political issue and policy issue, is what President Trump said about his now former friend, at least it seems, Elon Musk. And I want to go to Elena Trine at the White House. Elena, it seems as though we saw kind of the unraveling of a bromance real time.
Look at that smile. She can't even hide her elation. She is practically euphoric right now. And I get it, it is very funny, but really, who did not see that coming? Now, joining me is the president of the Center of the American Experiment, John Hinderaker. John, what a moment in history you have walked into, a very ferocious feud between two people that, I mean, really, it was never going to last, was it?
Well, this is a sad situation, honestly. It's an embarrassment for the Trump administration and for the whole conservative movement. And I fault Elon Musk. I think his attack on the big, beautiful bill was over the top and politically naive. And the things that he has been saying since, like about Epstein and so on, completely nuts, just crazy. But you're absolutely right. The liberal media loves to have a distraction so they don't have to talk about all the good things and the popular things that the Trump administration is actually doing.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I mean, when I'm looking at the way that the hosts are covering it and their faces lighting up, it's almost like some journalists want things to go bad for Americans because then they were right all along.
Well, there's no doubt about that. They root for America to fail. They root for our economy to go downhill. They scam the numbers that come out every month on GDP and so forth, hoping that things are going to be going down. They celebrate if there's a dip in the stock market. They loved it when Tesla stock briefly went down significantly, which, by the way, may be about to happen again. But you're right. They root for failure, particularly when we have a Republican president.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Well, moving on, because as expected, the media has done a little bit of sleight of hand with this story. And just last week, we were told Musk was a drug-addled, mentally ill assault victim with a black eye who had so little credibility, it was basically a crime to have him work in the White House.
It's kind of a rough last day in government for Elon Musk, who showed up to the Oval Office for some kind of send-off with a black eye, just hours after new bombshell reporting on allegations of his voracious drug use. In a lengthy article citing people familiar with his activities, the New York Times reports that Musk's drug consumption went well beyond occasional use. He told people he was taking so much ketamine, a powerful anesthetic, that it was affecting his bladder, a known effect of chronic use. I learned that today from the New York Times. Didn't know that. He took ecstasy and psychedelic mushrooms, and he traveled with a daily medication box that held about 20 pills, including ones with the markings of the stimulant Adderall, according to a photo of the box and people who have seen it. The Times adds that while his drug use on the campaign trail was more than occasional, it is unclear whether he was taking drugs when he became a fixture at the White House this year.
The coverage was ferocious, and no one was taking Musk seriously at this point.
This dude is a one-man anti-drug campaign. These are your pants. These are your pants on drugs. And I do love the fact, though, that the detail is he's the one who told him he had a platform. That That means things were so bad, he had to be like, oh, don't worry, it's nothing weird. It's just an overabundance of ketamine.
But then this happened.
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. This claim, which CNN cannot confirm, of course, would imply that Trump was in some way name-dropped in the case surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, the notorious and convicted pedophile who died by suicide in prison in 2019 while awaiting his federal sex trafficking trial. The accusation from Musk is about as nasty as it gets, accusing somebody of being a pedophile and then covering it up.
So wait, all of a sudden, Musk is a good enough primary and lone source to air the allegation about pedophilia and covering it up. They have no standards and there is no logic at all behind what they choose to air and what they choose to bury, other than does it help their political goals? Well, John, you kind of hinted at this during our last topic. There are these absurd allegations that Donald Trump is somehow assisting Jeffrey Epstein and he's covering it up. There's no basis for that. And so we've gone from one point where the media had no credibility for this bloke for a very good reason, to now they're saying, well, we can't confirm it, but here's the allegation. And they broadcast this baseless allegation to households all around the world. To me, it seems inappropriate, to say the least.
Well, you're right. What we're seeing here is a 180-degree switch on the part of the liberal media. Now, every single liberal commentator and journalist is going to be on Team Elon, eating up and publicizing anything bad he says about Donald Trump. And the reason for that is that they don't really care about Elon Musk. What they care about is President Trump.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Now, to my favourite activist journalist, Joy Reid. She was sacked by MSNBC and she's got a new theory about why.
Lots of people at the network who are critical of Donald Trump. I mean, and they're still critical of him, I'm assuming, you know. So yes. I don't think that's, but I do know there is a lot of anxiety, both there and I think in every media. We're seeing it at CBS, we're seeing it at ABC, where allegedly the View hosts were told not to go so hard on Trump, where there's a push for people to, hey, do less Trump, do more entertainment, don't be hard on him.
Yeah, I read that.
Litigious. There's a fear of him. So I think there's, you know, and obviously
But Joy, you were, I mean, let's be honest, you were no different than Nicole or Rachel Maddow.
Well, only in one way was I different. I'm a black woman doing the thing. You know what I mean? And so I'm not different, but I'm different.
John, do we really think that MSNBC is racially targeting their hosts? Is that plausible?
Well, here's what's going on. MSNBC is in a state of crisis. They're like CNN. They have gone so far left that no one wants to watch them. And Joy Reid is a part of that problem. Her viewership is down almost 50% since the election. So it's not hard to understand why they're having a big shakeup at MSNBC. But the other thing about Joy Reid is what we saw in that video is her playing the race card, right? The reality is that's the only card that Joy Reid has to play. If you ever saw her show, it was obsessed with race. That was pretty much the only thing Joy Reid wanted to talk about. And I think MSNBC may very well have made a good business decision that that is not the way to try to regain an audience.
Well said. Biden's old press sec, Karine Jean-Pierre, has a new book in which she criticises her own old administration.
President Biden's former press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, announced that she's writing a new book called Independent, a look inside a broken White House, outside party lines. And she shared why she says she's leaving the Democratic Party. Take a look.
I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. If you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to and vulnerable communities that I respect, I will be there with you. I will move forward with you.
Karine Jean-Pierre. What a name, by the way. An absolute cracker of a name. Now, this is the person that ran the comms. So she stood up there, disseminated all the propaganda. Biden's healthy. You're being a horrible person if you point out that he stumbled. She also said that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy. You know, this is a propagator. This is a person who has permeated all these lies. She's the one that pushed all the cheap fake. I don't know if you remember that, but this cheap fake phenomenon that we can't believe our own lying eyes. And now, well, she's an independent. She's credible. What do you make of this?
Karine Jean-Pierre was the Baghdad Bob of the Biden administration. She stood up there at the podium and probably told more lies than any press secretary in history, including the biggest one. She spent more time with Joe Biden than almost anyone. She was with him virtually every day, and she knew better than almost anyone that he was incompetent, that he was not, in fact, discharging the duties of his office, and she got up there repeatedly and gaslighted the American people. It was an absolutely shameless performance. And the idea that she is now this nonpartisan, independent, she's left the Democratic Party, seems pretty obvious that she is trying to reinvent herself so as to sell books.
It's so funny to me. It's the one person who probably can't reinvent themselves when they're the ones who's the face of the administration. But John Heinderecker, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your analysis.